identity, as well as the behavior, as well as, you know, it's a bigger framework than that. So I just want to be clear that, want to make sure you understood where I was coming from as well.
I was just thinking that part of the issue with consent and what you draw on is the difficulty that even human subjects have with communicating through language. Perhaps language isn't the ideal place to start when thinking about consent, and we need to reorient how we understand communication. So I would almost say that the emphasis on language becomes a bit specious and privileges the ability to have reason, logic, and language, which historically are, we talked about this already, you know, going back to Aristotle, it's Western, logocentric, patriarchal ways of understanding how we communicate and what is worth communicating. So I don't have a solution, but that could possibly be a way into sort of subverting and queering consent.
So I'd like to comment actually to both of you. So I understand what you're saying. When you talk about how consent can be problematic in and of itself, there still has to be some method of discerning between when the want or desire is evident or not. Otherwise, we basically just institutionalize rape, specifically within the sexual realm. So it's better, in my opinion, it's better to err on the side of extreme consent, of this very dichotomous language-based or at least obvious, I don't know how else to put that, but at least obvious consent. To err in the other direction guarantees that there's going to be moments where the crack slips, where somebody who does not mentally consent falls between.
To the point of being safe.
And okay, so
I just have a really quick
All right.
response to that. Then what do we make of the fact that hens don't consent to being fertilized? You know, it's not humans having sex with hens, but it is human production and machines that are made by humans that, you know, do that. Which, I mean, the opening plenary talked about that as rape.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So, you know, that relationship is already there, and culturally that's acceptable in Western culture at least.
and then I'm just going to bring it back. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going to repeat myself, but I think when we presume that all bestiality or any sexuality is not consensual, like you're saying, you know, to stay on the safer side, you might be still limiting people that find their relationship mutual, you know, there's a mutual want by all parties. And so I just fear of putting someone who feels like their sexuality is morally acceptable or right versus wrong into this box where they are, you know, found guilty of a misdemeanor or are still societally seen as a taboo, and I don't think that's okay.
I'll respond to that.
Okay, respond to that, and we'll take it. Both of them.
Okay.
So again, I understand what you're saying, but I would say this: we ask that at least human beings conduct ourselves in a particular way in society that is at least agreeable. If a couple of the participants here were to decide to go over in the corner and start their business while we were all here, we would not accept that. That would be So the point is, there's times where
But if
we
it were
have
violent, we would, if it appeared violent, we probably intervene.
It doesn't even have to necessarily be that. It's just not appropriate for the surrounding for the situation. So there are times where we already put limitations on human sexuality, whether that be right or wrong or not. That's how we're built. That's how we work right now. Some kind of grassroots change in that direction might be of some value if that's something that you really strongly feel about. I don't know how much traction you're going to get. More power to you. But the fact that we already ask for these certain kinds of limitations this certain kind of rationality when it comes to how we go about participating in our sexual endeavors is perfectly reasonable. And to say, you know what, this part of your sexuality is something that you need to just passively deny. It has a place in the grander scheme. We already do it. It's fully understood. We wouldn't want to change that. Absolutely, right? We wouldn't want to suddenly allow necrophilia. We wouldn't suddenly want to allow.
Okay, and before you respond, there are some burning comments back here.
I'll just write
And
it
then I will go right back to you. I will go right back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, one thing that I was thinking about was, in the video that you showed, Matthew, these people were talking about some of the behaviors that the animal was showing. And they were using those behaviors, as a way to kind of justify to themselves that the animal was consenting, you know, this different, you know, the biting or whatever, which I think is, you know, pretty obviously, you know, an anthropomorphization of, you know, of the animal. I think in some sense it's unavoidable in any kind of interaction or consideration of an animal to not anthropomorphize, because, you know, of course we can never understand the animal, what they're thinking, feeling, whatever. But I think it's also important to be aware of that fact, to be aware of the fact that we are anthropomorphizing in that way. And I think if we are really using our imagination, which is like something I always talk about, that's what I was presenting on yesterday, was like the synthetic imagination from Coetzee. But I think if we really use that and imagine to the fullest extent any kind of all possible things or whatever that the animal might be feeling. So they just immediately are assuming that that their assumptions are correct, and they're not imagining other possible things that animal might be, you know, thinking. They're not trying to interpret those behaviors in any other way. So I mean, how do they know for sure that the animal is not, you know, suffering in some way from that? I don't know. It's not exactly a question or anything, but.
Did you want to jump in?
No, mine was a different question, which I guess I could ask, and then you guys can talk about whatever you want to. But I guess it's just curious, do you really think that, so right now, so first, I guess it's two parts. One is, do you really think that we have no way of a non-human animal showing consent or sexual desire and a want to do this? I mean, if, like Matthew's example, if you're laying on your bed and your animal comes up and starts performing oral sex on you, isn't that in some way an animal showing desire to do this? Which is separating this from whether or not there could be other problems besides consent. But do you really think there's no way for an animal to show sexual desire? And then second, if we could show that and figure this out, like, would that make it more okay? This is back to me just thinking that consent is not what makes it okay or not.
So if a consent machine was created, would that be okay then?
Well, no, you have other arguments against it. You had a 5-part one. Did you really think that there's no way for an animal to show consent?
So I'll answer that with an analogy because it seems to be the easiest route. If an 11-year-old crawls in bed with their dad and out of curiosity starts to play with him while he's asleep, does that imply consent?
Well, yeah, it does imply consent and sexual desire. I mean,
But is it consent, or is it just physicality or curiosity?
Well,
They're very different things from that.
but I mean, doesn't it show sexual desire maybe?
But that's not the same thing as consent. Consent is an equal dialogue and an understanding of the outcome of what you're consenting to. It's understanding the question that's being asked.
What if we make this less maybe instantly inflammatory, and what if it's to 11-year-olds? And what if an 11-year-old girl reaches over and starts kissing and performing sexual acts with an 11-year-old boy? That's equal levels for both of them, maybe. At least that's the fact that I think people know stuff for this. So then, is that not consensual? Is it at 12? Is it at 13? I mean, I'm obviously going to a framework where I think that children have some ways that they can consent to things that we don't give. But yes, what if it's to 11-year-olds?
Okay.